Hey everyone, let's do something a little different today. Let's start off with some hi-fi news, and then get into a fun, short little review on an interesting little pocket-sized mini projector. Starting things off, we have a new WiiM product coming out. Shocking, right? But this one has a lot of people excited, including myself. Looks like we're getting a WiiM integrated amp. Same WiiM streaming software, same improved DAC that's in the new Pro Plus, but we now get what looks to be an amp built around the 3255 chip, which is easily one of my favorites on these small desktop builds. They can put out plenty of clean power. It also appears we're getting a sub out. My hope there is we have some control over this one, hopefully some selectable crossover points, and the big one for myself, and I think a lot of other people, HDMI ARC, all wrapped up in this, what looks to be nice little aluminum case. This one definitely looks like a step up as far as build quality, and very much will be a direct competitor to things like the Bluesound Power Node. I have a demo unit on the way. This one I'm very interested in. Priced right, this could be a standalone amp option for a lot of people. So now we have another company that has found the spotlight this year and is trying to keep up the momentum. The Eversolo DMP A6 was a huge hit on the streaming market, and they appear to be following it up with the DMP A8, which is a larger, upgraded unit with more preamp capabilities. Big changes for this one will be a switch to AKM. The A8 will have a AK4499EX base DAC rather than the 9038 in the A6. It also has an HDMI ARC connection, which will please a lot of people. When I reviewed the A6, the missing connection was a major complaint for a lot of people. What else is there? There's a new hybrid power supply, IPS only for the DAC section to eliminate noise between the system circuit and the audio circuit, R2R analog volume control to keep things clean. Basically, all the features that the A6 had that made it a hit with some new additions. It's looking really promising. I do wish they chased the Hi-Fi Rose look a bit further here and expanded the screen size. Now that we're working with a larger case, it's the same 6-inch screen that the A6 uses. It's a nice screen nonetheless, but just looking at it, I feel like they missed an opportunity here. The price will also increase over the A6, no big surprise there, but it's a substantial jump. It looks like it's going to be priced around $2,000. Now onto the battle of the mini monoblocks. AIMA and Fazi are going toe-to-toe this fall and winter with their new models, the AIMA A07 Max, which I actually have a pair here right now configured in mono mode, and the upcoming Fazi ZA3. Both of these are the latest attempts at pleasing their growing customer bases with new features and capabilities. The amps have a lot in common, both built around the 3255 amp chip. Both have selectable mono stereo options. It looks like this one is going to be the first attempt at separating from the pack of the other desktop Class D amps. The AIMA struck first with their new design, which I'll have a review coming in the coming weeks or so. It's certainly an improvement in the looks and design department, but I have a feeling Fazi is going to end up being a little bit more premium. It offers both RCA and XLR connections and a traditional sub-out, plus what appears to be a more premium case design. I'll open up both of these to get a real comparison once I get my hands on these, but looking high level at these, the Fazi design looks really nice with one obvious flaw, the stereo mono switch on the front. No need for that to be so accessible. AIMA placed it on the bottom of the amp in a much safer position, so I think that's one thing that people might look at on these. Another thing that might separate these right out of the gate is what power supply is included. AIMA is shipping with a 36 volt 6 amp from Amazon. If Fazi ships these out with a 48 volt option, that might sway a lot of people in that direction. Well, that'll do it for the news today. Now let's jump into a fun little tech review I ran into recently. So this channel primarily reviews audio equipment, but I throw in some tech here and there if something is interesting enough to me to pull my attention away from some of the audio reviews. I get about 5 requests a week from random companies asking me to review everything from phone chargers to home improvement tools. Thankfully, I don't put anyone through cell phone charger reviews, but a little mini projector with a built-in battery and speaker caught my eye enough to put together a quick review. I brought this little projector with me on a road trip last weekend to visit family with the intention to demo it and hopefully distract all the kids for a little while. I connected a Fire Stick and brought along a pair of SVS powered speakers to get the most out of it. The kids agreed on Sing 2 after the usual argument of what show to watch for what seems like forever, and then off we went. It kept 4 of the 5 kids in the room for the entire show, so that's something to be said. Anyways, here's a breakdown of the highlights and lowlights I found on the Fatork mini projector, as well as a couple required settings on your Fire Stick to get everything working properly. Jumping right into this one, here are 8 highlights right off the bat. And what's interesting here is many of the highlights are going to show up again when we discuss the lowlights. Number 1, it has Wi-Fi screen sharing. You can simply pair this with your iOS or Android device and share pictures or video, with a little catch that'll come up later in the lowlights. Number 2, we have an HDMI input. This is the input I would use probably 99% of the time I use this device. It's going to open you up to things like a Fire Stick, a PC, or even a Blu-ray player. Another one with a gotcha incoming too. Number 3, it has a battery life of roughly 2.5 hours. This is an area I had no complaints at all. It's enough battery to watch the majority of movies, and coming from a device of this size, I think that's actually pretty good. Number 4, we have a built-in speaker. You can operate this little Fatork as a completely standalone unit, wireless screen sharing into it, battery power, and a built-in speaker. It's a great option to take a simple display with you on the road. Number 5, we have Bluetooth, and that'll let you connect something like a battery-powered Bluetooth speaker. That is likely the way I would go if I didn't want to connect a powered set like I did. Number 6, automatic Keystone Adjustment. This is a pretty big one, and it simply means your video is going to be adjusted automatically to have square corners with the top no wider than the bottom. That seems relatively simple, but if you had to do this manually, it would really take away from the simplicity of this design. Number 7, it comes with a remote and a stand. The remote is simple and cheap, but it doubles down on all the controls that are on the top of the projector, and at the very least gives you some volume control without getting out of your seat. The last thing you want to do is poke and prod the top of the unit and having it bounce all over the place while you're trying to watch content. Something kind of funny, the remote basically looks like every other remote that we continuously see from a lot of the small Class D amps. I was pointing a SMSL DAC remote at it for about 30 seconds, wondering why it wasn't working. And not to waste anyone's time here, let's bring in the lowlights. So this one supports 1080p input, but its native resolution is 480p. It's not going to provide a razor sharp image with 480p, and this will show up mostly in text, but as long as you keep the screen size around 80, it still does a really respectable job for the price. For casual movie watching on a big screen, it's actually pretty good. 150 lumens. It is what it is. 150 lumens can do pretty well in a mostly dark room, even good in a really dark room. But if you introduce a lot of light in a room, expect your image to be pretty washed out. But this is expected and is an area where if it was much brighter, I can't imagine it would do the battery life any favors. And the 2.5 hours we get are mostly ideal and not something that I'd be willing to sacrifice. So now we're an audio channel. Let's talk about the speakers. They actually do a fair job for the size that we're dealing with here, but like I said, this is an audio channel, and I would much prefer to use their 3.5 auxiliary connection and connect a speaker of my liking. It's really simple, and in my case, like I said, I just brought the SVS powered speakers along. There is a latency when you're using the wireless screen sharing. I personally wouldn't use the wireless screen sharing very much. It introduces a latency which can make some content a little more difficult to watch. It'd still be fine for simple tasks like photos or even YouTube, where latency wouldn't be nearly as big of an issue as, say, a 2-hour movie. When you use the HDMI, there's no latency at all and everything looks great. Portability can come into question if you want the best performance. When I use this device, I personally bring in a Fire Stick over HDMI, which in turn requires an outlet. The Fire Stick opens this projector up to an entire new world of capabilities over the wireless casting capabilities, but it comes at the cost of portability. I would ideally add a pair of external speakers, which I mentioned. They do make this very simple with their 3.5mm output, but it's another device, unless you're using something battery powered, that'll need to be plugged in. Another option here would be a portable power bank. That would keep everything portable, but would obviously add to the cost. A quick tour of the unit, we have 4 directional controls and a select button in the center. The bottom with the 3 lines is the menu, and the arrow is simply the back button. On the left side, we have the 3.5mm auxiliary that I use with the SVS speakers and the power button. The back has the USB, DC charger, and HDMI input. And on the right side, we have a little focus wheel. The bottom has the 1/4" thread, which can be used with the included tripod. A look at the menu, we can see the cast options of iOS and Android, as well as DLNA. Below that, we have input selections of HDMI and USB, as well as the settings. We won't deep dive into any of the settings, but a few highlights are the high bright mode versus normal. Might save you some battery life, but I would personally leave it on bright mode. A projection mode, so you can have this set as front, rear, front ceiling, or rear ceiling projection. Beyond that, there's just some other features in here like updates and some of the manual adjustments. But we're just going to keep this at a high level today. One note I want to mention, this didn't actually work for me right out of the box with a Fire Stick. I had to make a couple of adjustments adjustments on the Fire Stick to correct the colors in the audio. If you run into this, the Fire Stick needs to have dynamic range set to adaptive to correct the colors, and the audio needs to be set to always PCM to correct the sound. After that, no issues at all, and it works great with the Fire Stick. The takeaway here is this is really about as simple as it gets for a portable budget display. I would have to say your best use cases might be something like I did, where you just want to cast a big screen for kids to enjoy a movie, or possibly something for the user who is on the road a lot. You could have a little mobile home theater with you if you really wanted, all out of your backpack. Or even if you wanted to take this outdoors, you could take it along on a camping trip or anything like that, and it's really a portable standalone unit. It's not going to replace a high quality home theater projector by any means, but it's simple, cheap, and actually works pretty well. I think this is a fun little device, and I can recommend it for those looking for something like this. It's budget enough that it can be worth it, even if it just has occasional use cases. Quality isn't perfect, but it's perfectly fine for its intended use case.